Okay, we are back. If you were listening to last week's episode, this week's episode is the same beautiful Kiana who has a book coming out next year and it is so fun and I'm very excited. If you haven't caught up on it, you can hear her story. Really unique publishing journey. We'll talk a little bit more about that here, but and just kind of how it started at age 16, went through school, had to do a lot of self-teaching. It's really cool, has a lot of value in it, so definitely go back and listen to it if you haven't already. But we're going to continue our conversation here and talk more about, now that we've covered her journey, the editing side. Because, like you said just now before this, I pressed record, which I should have pressed it earlier, I should have learned my lesson, is that, a lot of people feel like once you hit, okay, I found an agent, I found a publisher, that it's, that's the main obstacle. But it's not the only obstacle, it's maybe not even the main obstacle, right? There's so much
No.
to learn beyond that. And for those of you thinking, oh, she, got a book deal, finished her book in 8 months, it's all, roses. I think you have another story to tell.
No.
So I'm gonna turn the microphone to you now.
Well,
Go ahead
thank
and
you.
tell them about your, why the book deal isn't the end. What was your editing process?
Yeah, so it's been a crazy journey. So I was telling you earlier that a lot of times people think like when you get your agent, you get your book deal, like that's it, like that's your one way ticket to success. It's not always the case because your book does go through so many more edits when you get your agent and when you get your book deal, especially for me. And that's like something I want people to like really know about me. Like I didn't just like query for 8 months and get this like magical book deal. I've been putting in work for it since spring of 2021. So it's currently spring 2023. I have been editing this book that I did get a deal for about 2 years now. And I was supposed to debut back in March. And now it's April and we're back in development. Like we don't even have a manuscript right now. So it's a crazy process. So when me and Ashley signed on together, it was such a untraditional process, meaning we pretty much built the outline together with her, like her vision for what she saw of the story and like my vision. And in the beginning stages, it was my first time ever working with an editor. I never did revision with my agent because I already had the book deal. So this manuscript like really wasn't in like the right place and we had to play around with it a lot and I feel like what my struggle was in the beginning was really this tug of war of like what I saw my manuscript as and how Ashley saw the manuscript and really trying to appease like both visions, which can at times be emotionally taxing because like a lot, actually 99.9% of the time, I will always agree with Ashley, but sometimes it'll take me a while to get there. Because when you're so close to your story and when it's so personal to you, it's oftentimes difficult for me, especially like to take a step back and be like, you know what, like, you're right. Because I had seen the story one way for so many years that when we're taking it in a different direction, it takes a lot of adjusting to see it from a different lens. And sometimes it's hard because you're on deadline and you don't have the privilege of being able to sit with an edit before making it. Sometimes you just have to do it. And sometimes for me, it wasn't until I did the edit that I saw the benefit of it.
Mm.
And I feel like what's important, like if you do have the privilege to like sit with feedback and really think it over, to really consider why someone is asking you to make that change before writing it off. And I feel like that's another reason why this process has been so long for both of us, is because I'm very close to the story. Ashley is also so close to the story because we built this baby together. We are both so invested in it that often it was really difficult for either of us to look at it objectively, because we're so close, we know what we're trying to tell, and it may not always like communicate in the way we wanted to. So that's why we had to get another set of eyes on it. So basically, the reason my debut got pushed back, I was supposed to go to copy edits back in October. And this was really emotional for me back then, which is I think when you met me was like back in October, and like I didn't connect with you for a long time because this was, to me at the time, so heartbreaking. Like the most heartbreaking thing ever was hearing that my book was getting pulled from copy edits and going back to development. And I didn't understand why at first. So Ashley had taken on an editorial assistant, and the editorial assistant was the one who reviewed my manuscript and went to Ashley and said, hey, I think this like may need a bit more work. And at the time, again, like soul crushing, like worst thing to happen to me. Like I also just got out of a 6-year relationship at the time and I lost my job. Like it was like a lot for me. I
But
was like going through so much. Yeah. So it was like very like emotional time for me hearing that news, especially when I was so close to it. Like it felt like, you know, a roadblock like in my journey. And they sent me over this edit letter. It was like a massive 10-page single space edit letter. I couldn't even read it for at least like 2 or 3 months because it just like was so shocking to me to hear that, you know, me and Ashley had thought this book was ready to be published. Everyone had thought this book was going to debut in spring. And then to just have it like ripped out from underneath me was so soul crushing. But again, like I was saying, sometimes it really takes you like a bit to like take a step back, consider why those edits are being proposed to you. And then like be able to work on it, because I feel like for me, like when I first heard the news was getting pulled, I was angry. I did not want to make the changes. I didn't understand why the changes had to be made. Like I just didn't get it. Looking back now, I'm so thankful that we didn't publish what we were going to publish, because even after doing this like last round with Ashley back in February, I feel like it's taken the story so much closer to like what I want it to be. And that's the thing about like your editor. Like they are always going to like send you revisions with like your best interest in mind. Like Ashley knows exactly the heart of the story that I want to share, and she's just giving me examples on how to get there. And I feel like for me it took me literally probably 3 months, because I think I got the edits back in October, November, December, January. Yeah, I didn't start working on it until January. So I guess my biggest piece of advice to other people, when you get feedback and you're reluctant to it, just give it time and consider and ask the person who's giving that feedback why they're making the change, because I promise you I'm so much more happy with the manuscript now than I was back in October. And so the journey has been crazy. And you know how I told you me and Ashley were so close to the manuscript, we ended up bringing on another editor to work on the manuscript with us. And again, you know, she's amazing. Like I love her vision, I love everything she's done for me so far, but she has her own different version of like how she could see the manuscript going too. So back in February, I was on a very strict deadline. I rewrote my entire book within the month of February.
ooh,
The
wow.
whole book again from scratch. And Kate, my new editor, who I'm working with, she also read it. Me and Ashley had a meeting with her, proposed like several like very pivotal changes that we're still kind of like in the process of deciding which direction we want to go in. So like, you know, it was, you know, cutting a POV, like altering, you know, a main character's like plot, like their story, their love interest, like, you know, it's like very like big changes still happening to the book. So I guess the reason it's kind of difficult for me to talk about the book sometimes, like even though we are planning on debuting in summer, it's not for sure. Like there's no manuscript right now, which is crazy to think, because you know I did get the book deal. I still have the book deal, like you know, like it's gonna get published, but there's no current manuscript. Like I'm still having to rewrite that. And it's a lot of waiting. It's a lot of back and forth. It was, you know, most recently, like Ashley had Kate had proposed her edits to Ashley. Ashley took some time to look that over, sent Kate feedback. So there's a lot of like waiting on my end just to see the outline for like what we're going to do next. And then even after receiving that outline, it's going to be me deciding if I want to go with their outline or if I want to change things about the outline, or, you know, so again, like the process is really time
Oh,
consuming and can be like emotionally taxing. But I mean, I'm really grateful for it. I'm grateful I get to work with both of them. And I really do feel like my vision is supported. So I don't know, I guess like another piece of advice I would give is always stay humble and realize like the people who are helping you, they're helping you for a reason. They wouldn't put the time and energy into sharing feedback with you if they didn't care about it. So yeah, that's kind of like what my
no,
journey's been like so far.
yeah, yeah, you know, so true. And something that I talk about in the solo cast earlier in season one is that you can't that feedback, you can't get rid of the sting. Like it still stings when you get it, even if you know the intentions are good, that you know that they're right. Like you have, there's that piece of you that has to come to grips with the fact that they've changed and cut things that you built. And I
Mhm.
think acknowledging that, but not ruminating in it, letting have some time away from it, like you said, or repurpose your thoughts, repurpose what you're doing right now in your writing. Just moving forward is the best way because once you stop there, it feels like an obstacle that you just can't overcome. And
Yeah.
feedback is so important in this industry. I think because we write alone,
Mhm.
a lot of new people think that the feedback is kind of more optional or that it's like meant maliciously, right? But
Yeah.
but half of this, if not 75%, 90% of it is editing. And if it's only you editing, it's not good enough probably yet because you're so invested, right? You can't see the holes where other people can see the holes. You just need that person who knows what's going on. So that is
Exactly.
so true, so very true. And you kind of talked about how much you've learned, and something that I've struggled with as an author, or I guess, excuse me, as a writer, hopefully an author.
You are an
Um,
author. Everyone's an author.
I'm an
You have
author of
to
my own story, right? Yeah,
manifest it. You're already an author.
I'm an author. I'm
Yeah,
so
all
happy.
writers are authors, like one day it's gonna happen. Yeah.
Yes, right. I
Yeah.
should say that more often. Um, not knowing what I don't know, and that's part of coming out of college. I mean, I did get a little more education on the publishing process, but it feels like the more you learn in this
Mhm.
industry, there's so much more that opens up that you need to learn.
Yeah.
Things work and what looks good, and I mean, it's insane. And so I guess dealing with not knowing what you don't know has been a big thing, and so how you handle it um has been, really inspiring, and I love that you admitted to putting it off for a few months because we can't all be perfect and we can't all be the ideal, human being who can do all the work and not feel any emotion attached to it. I mean, our writing wouldn't be good anyways if that
Yeah.
was the case, right? But uh, I just wanted to point that out to, some of our listeners here that that's a really key point. We did talk also about how, the book deal isn't the end, right? You're still working on it. It isn't published yet, but have you, I guess, have you been preparing for post-publishing? Because a lot of people don't talk about that process. I mean, what do you need to do being a published author, what you need to look, if there's anything they're having you prep for now, if there's anything you're prepping for, what that looks like.
Oh my gosh. I don't know. I feel like all of it is so overwhelming. Um, I do have I am some friends with people who are published, and I feel like they've kind of mentally prepared my expectations too. I feel like the biggest thing is everyone's dream is to well, not everyone's dream, but my dream is to be on the New York Times bestsellers list. And, I've also been friends with people who I've seen who we really thought and believed they would also end up on the list too, but just kind of understanding even if you don't land on the list, you've still done this incredible, amazing thing of being able to write and tell a story and putting so much love and energy into it that I feel like I've been mentally preparing myself, even if it doesn't make the list, I can still be proud of it. And I feel like something that's been helping me is just being really present with every step of the process, just being grateful every step in the process, even when I'm doing my revision, looking back on it and being wow, look how far it's come since it was just a thought in my brain, or look how much it's come since it was just a feeling that I had when I was 16, and just kind of telling myself the success of your book really comes from within. If you're proud of yourself, that is kind of all that matters, is that you did it, and that the expectations, how well it sells, and how it places on the list, or if it even places, it can matter, but at the end of the day, I think what matters the most is just being able to tell the story. So I feel that's what I've been kind of just mentally preparing myself for, because I mean, obviously, it would be great to make the list eventually, but I know it's not something guaranteed. Um, and so I feel like I've been mentally preparing for that a lot. Other than that, I don't know. I feel like I've been trying to stay just
Oh,
focused on the revision for now.
oh, that's, yeah.
Yeah,
Be in the present, and maybe that is the answer, right?
yeah,
Stop freaking out about what's coming because you and back over here in these little query trenches, like trying to think of all the things that would need to be fixed, and if they would give you a partial request, what would you do? And you know what I mean? That just freaks you out. That's biting too much of the cookie, I think,
Yeah.
sometimes, and that's something I have to remind myself of is just this is what I'm doing now. And I love that you said look back on what you've done because sometimes I feel, what right do I have to come on here on the show and talk about what you need to be doing? Thankfully, it's not me, it's the interviewee.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I wouldn't do it. But and it's more just you've been working on this thing and you made it come to life. Like I mean, it's in my drawer. I've got this. I mean, it isn't a beautifully bounded book that's ready for self-publishing, but I do have my little,
Yes, your
my
notebook.
little spiral bound manuscript that I, switch through and work on in red pen because that's what feels correct in this industry. And it's it's amazing to if you haven't done it, just try printing it out. Try getting some kind of physical form of the thing that you created in your mind because I think it really does kind of feel more real. And
Yeah.
you're like, I made all of this. Like someone else can read this and make sense of it. And it was created out of my brain, my
Yeah,
thoughts.
it was. And I also just want to say, I don't think you should ever discredit yourself, even if you're not published. You are totally valid to give advice. I feel like I've learned so much advice from people who are unagented and who don't have book deals. Like, I feel like it's important in this industry to stay humble and realize that anyone you meet can teach you anything. And it doesn't matter like what stage you're in, like, you can be inspired and motivated and changed by anyone, no matter what part of the journey is. So that's why I always say, like, even if someone isn't published or I still value them the same way as I value myself. So, because I feel like I've learned so much from people who are still like in querying phases or like still looking, who are on sub. Like you can learn so much from anyone.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Wow, thank you. I
Of
mean, thank
course.
first of all for the compliment, but also
Yeah. Of
for,
course.
being humble and being that person that's, a good example of letting those who are supposed to come to you come and influence you. And you must have been just such a great mentor choice when they were picking out mentors back in 2021. And speaking of mentorship, I mean, that's something that's been on my mind a lot. I'm sure if it's on my mind, then it's been on a lot of the listeners' mind at some point or another, or will continue to be. And I mean, I know you can't always find mentors in the places that you think you will, right? You need to be open to new experiences. But
Mhm.
as a previous mentor, what is a trait or, something specific that you looked for when you were deciding on a mentee?
Yeah, so we kind of talked about this briefly before, like just you and I, but I feel like what really resonates with me is finding a story with a lot of heart and just finding someone who I can tell they have a message they want to share and who's looking to deliver that message in the best way possible to their audience and really helping them shape that. Because I feel like I really write from a place that's personal to me. And I write for my younger self and I write for people like me. And I look for stories that are trying to do the same, that want to share this like really intimate part with them and just helping them come into it in a way that's digestible like for readers. And I feel like that's exactly what my editor Ashley has done for me. Like that's why like she probably was such a great Pitchfork's mentor. Because she really looks for stories that have potential and have heart, and emphasize shaping it around that message. So yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I mean, some of PitNat I think is gone now, sadly,
I
cry.
know.
Some of them, and it was wonderful to have that, but there's always opportunities, right, to reach out and ask questions. And one of the things I learned quickly in college is in this industry is to take all of the opportunities you can to learn. And if that means going to a late night conference after you've had a long day at work, that's what it means. If it means jumping behind a screen and being uncomfortable for 15 plus podcast episodes until you get the hang of it, then that's what it means. But it's getting the resources that you can and giving what you can. And that's great advice. And
Yes, I
um,
mean, look how many people you're helping. Like, even if you are, unagented or if you don't have a book deal yet, you're still helping so many other writers, like just like you, or even writers like me. Like, I'm so excited to listen to your podcast, and I feel like you're teaching me things too, just by making the podcast happen. So, just
thank
appreciate yourself and don't sell yourself short.
you. Thank you.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it really is a humbling thing to even just to get to be around so many amazing individuals. And that's why I love this, because we are writers and we're authors and we're amazing and we're creative and there's so many different personalities, but we all come together to try to inspire one another. And I mean, I think back on one of the, first series that influenced my life as a, I guess, tween. And it wasn't a book on, hey, this is how you survive with moving and going to a new high school. That's not what the book was about. It
Yeah.
was a book about tigers and first Indian curses, and you know what I mean. And but it resonated so deeply with me. Like I was
Yeah.
so absorbed with it that it changed who I wanted to be and how I wanted to write. Like you said, your influence writing, and that's the kind of thing we aim for, is to give people that fulfillment and that feeling. And it's a good reminder to all of us. We are almost to the end of episode two, I mean part two, our episode with Kiana, and I want to give you the opportunity to elaborate on anything. I mean, you've given a lot of advice, so that's okay if you don't have anything else, but if there's anything you would want to leave our new and aspiring writers, maybe
Mm.
starting out in that editing, querying process, what would you tell them?
Ooh. Sorry, let me take a chance
Okay,
to
you
think.
have a minute to think about it. We can stop the pause.
Yeah, I feel like I touched on this in like my part one, but really just finding the story that you will champion even when no one else does. I know people tell you to write for yourself all the time, but like you really have to mean it. Like you really have to love it more than anything. And that's how I felt about my debut. Like I would love it so much. I would be willing to do anything for it. And I feel like, you can really see that in my editorial process. I've rewritten my book like with Ashley probably 3 times now. And the reason I didn't just give up back in October is because I had that same feeling of knowing that no matter what I do in this lifetime, I need to share this because it's the deepest part of me. And I feel like once you have that story where you feel like this is every side of me, like every beautiful, messy, sad part of me, like that's the story you need to tell. And like if you're able to believe in it, like someone else is going to believe in it as well. So yeah, just don't give up. And I hope that you guys all, write for yourself, like even when people are telling you no, or even when you feel like people don't believe in it, like as long as you believe in it, that's enough for it to get somewhere. So yeah.
Great.
Thank
Mic-
you.
Microphone drop there. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
Everybody who's listening, just keep your eye out for her. And she's got more to
Oh,
come, not just this book, but I'm so excited to follow you on your writing career and
thank
your journey
you.
that you continue. And if you haven't remembered it, it's called Dance of the Starlit Sea now. And
Yes.
check it out. Be ready summer 2024, because she's gonna
Hopefully.
be making some waves and it's gonna be on those bookshelves and I'm gonna be so excited. You'll definitely see a tweet from me. So
Thank
look her
you.
up in the we've got some of her socials. We got some of your website and your book. Look her up in our resources section and we'll stay in touch. And thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate
It was my
it.
pleasure. And to you word wizards out there, right on.